Hello, my name is Julien Delagrange and I'm a contemporary artist from Belgium, born in '94 in Kortrijk and residing and working in Harelbeke. Here in the gallery I'm today presenting 21 new works, both oil paintings and charcoal drawings, in which I practice the artistic discipline on both paper and on canvas. The title of the show, Rites oubliés, or Forgotten Rites, refers to a rather important overarching concept in my work, which is our very often forgotten primitive nature. Today we live in a very civilized, secular, globalized and technological world. So most of those primitive mechanisms need to be suppressed because they are no longer accepted or no longer of use from an evolutionary perspective, resulting in feelings of alienation, pain, despair, existential thoughts. However, this selection of works is not necessarily a lamentation or a reactionary indictment to modernity or progress. It is actually a way of providing understanding, to find solace towards those sentiments. Because there is a lot of beauty, sometimes even violent beauty and power in that primitive nature, which is especially exemplified in the strong presence of Pina Bausch's Rite of Spring in this series. And this is a primal desire that is residing in every single one of us. The visual language of the work is clearly distinctively figurative. However, I'm not necessarily interested in representation for the sake of representation or in mimesis. So I'm not really interested in rendering every single inch of the canvas. Instead, I aim to present just the structure of the image, and then the rendering or the processing occurs in your mind or even in your imagination. And it's thanks to pictorial conventions, which I'm paying tribute to numerous artists, some of the most important artists of our Western history that are rooted in my DNA as a Belgian painter, I think. For instance, when I paint the drapery, which is an important motif in my practice, the pleating, I don't aim to replicate the drapery as from my source material, but I paint it in a very pure manner in which the pigment is untouched, which is reminiscent to Flemish primitives from the 15th century, for example, Jan van Eyck, or how you can paint very little but still suggest an entire landscape simply by using the color perspective from Joachim Patenier from the 16th century, starting with very green foreground with a lot of grass, a lot of color. And then as we go back in the picture plane, we encounter brown, more gray tones. And then of course, in the end, the aerial perspective, which is more like a gradient, which can feel very contemporary, in my opinion, when you paint it very, very flat. Or even in the skin itself, which can be obtained with very earthy tones, in which the underpainting, the hue of the underpainting shines through, which is of course mastered by, for instance, Peter Paul Rubens in the 17th century. So by implementing all these pictorial conventions, I can do actually very, very little or show very little, and yet we see the entire image. And this is what fascinates me the most and really emphasizes that slowness of the painting. And that's, of course, the magic or the alchemy of the painting. Most often the main attribute of charcoal is to be able to create smooth gradients, to create that realistic appearance and aesthetic. However, I opt to ignore this attribute and keep the edges or the planes of all the different tones very, very rigid, very rough. So by doing so, I only commit to depicting the structure once more, which allows us to slow down once more in the experience of the visual, resulting in a rather personal, unorthodox technique in which I combine charcoal and very thin layers of dust to build those planes of gray, to create those different tones, accompanied by interventions with pastels, Chinese ink, crayon, graphite, gesso, and even some oil paint for the highlights. So by doing so, when seeing the drawing from a distance, it looks rather photorealistic, but when approaching it for closer inspection, the entire image starts to dissolve and we see those very rigid, almost abstract shapes and tones, how the image is being built. There are numerous other reflections in the compositions and the images, ranging from personal, more intimate narratives to some reflections on contemporary art, from, for instance, the problematic nature of appropriation today, up to issues of authorship, which I play with. However, it's not always necessary to be aware of all those layers. As soon as the layers are in there, the painting starts to take over at a certain point. And it goes beyond my intent or beyond my control. And that's always the thing that surprises me the most when I see them on the wall and in the show. And that's also how I would invite a viewer to look at the works itself.